Hello and welcome to Battle Report number 9. So this isn't a tournament battle report because obviously UB battle report, UB tournaments even, happen a game a week essentially. So there's plenty of space in between games, in between rounds to have other games. So in this one I'm doing a little bit of practice ready for round 3, getting myself used to the, or trying out the map and the secondary objective with the deployment and such, and I'm playing against a player from the UK Masters, and he's using his Masters list, so we're going to see how we get on against him. And he's playing his Ogre Khans, and I'm using... For some reason I didn't use my my Masters open list. I tried something slightly different, so let's take a look at the lists now, shall we? So I've got a Duke on Hippogriff, but he's not my general. He's got Questing Oath and Bastard Sword with Basalt and Infusion to give him a 2-up armor save and 3-up Flaming Ward. He's got Black Knight's Tabard and Obsidian Rock, and he's got the Virtue of Humility, so it makes him insignificant, and he gains Rally around the flag, which, as he's insignificant, he can use himself, so he acts as his own BSB, which is really cool. So you can use him on a flank, and with the Black Knight's Tabard and a 2-up save at Resilience 5, he's pretty tough to kill. Maybe a little bit expensive for 600 points, but I think this was a better build than my my general for the Masters Open. So I'm going to be experimenting with Humility, I think, from now. Then I've got a second Duke, who is my general, on a Barded Warhorse with a shield and a lance with Divine Judgement, so that's multiple wounds D3+1 on the charge. He's got the Questing Oath and Bastard Sword, he's got Dragonfire Gem for a 2-up Flaming Ward, a Potion of Strength, just in case he needs it for a second round of combat, because he's not great if he's not charging, and he's not great in the second round of combat as well. And he's got the Virtue of Valour, which means that he has to issue a duel whenever it's possible for him to do so, and that duel must then be accepted by a model that can accept it, which is pretty cool. I think, again, in hindsight, I would have been better off putting Audacity on him to give him rerolls against large and gigantic. But this was an interesting one to try out for this game, I think. Next, I've got a Damsel on an Equitan Unicorn. She's a Wizard Master of Druidism, so I've scaled back my magic for this phase, or for this game rather. Just trying out a full Wizard Master of Druidism, because I found Druidism on Adept works well, but I think you get far more mileage for your points if you go for the full Master with Druidism. Then I've got a Paladin BSB on a Barded Warhorse with a shield. His battle standard is enchanted with 2 Aether icons, and he's got the Questing Oath and Bastard Sword as well. For my core, I've got a unit of 12 Knights Aspirant with the Banner of the Last Charge and a Musician. Decided to change over to Aspirants because I don't need the Knights of the Realm as a Damsel bunker anymore, if I've only got the one of them. And if I put a character in there with the Aspirants, then they don't get their rerolls to charge. And I think with the Banner of the Last Charge, obviously you want to be getting the charge so that you're making use of the very expensive impact hits banner. So I wanted to try that out for this game, find out how they do. You lose a little bit of strength and a little bit of discipline, weapon skill, but definitely worth trying out. And then I've got 2 units of Knights of the Realm with full command, just 6 knights. 2 units of 8 Knights of the Quest with full command. 1 unit has the Aura Flam, which is causing fear and stopping units in base contact with the bearer from using Rally Round the Flag. And the other unit has Banner of Speed, which against fear-causing units means that that unit is now Advance 11 on the charge, which is pretty intimidating. I've moved back to using the Green Knight. I feel like I'm comfortable enough with Equitaine now to start using the Green Knight. When I first started using him, or using Equitaine rather, I did really like the Green Knight, but I wasn't very good with him at bringing him out at the right time. And it's going to take more practice still, but trying to balance the Green Knight and lots of cavalry models that need the charge was too much at the beginning, so I'm trying him out again now. 2 units of Chaff with Yeoman Outriders with shields and bows. And then the Ogre Khans list. So this is a UK Masters list, so should potentially be pretty scary for me to face. He's got a Shaman, who is the general, but I've not marked it down there. He's a Wizmaster of Thaumaturgy with paired weapons, a Binding Scroll, and Magical Heirloom. A Khan Battle Standard Bearer with light armor with Essence of Mithril, a great weapon, and Crown of the Wizard King. He's got Cult Leader, so his rally round flag is 18 inches. A Mammoth Hunter with light armor and Destiny's Call for a 4-up, 4-up. Paired weapons, Hunting Spear, Dragonfire Gem, Potion of Strength, Spine Splitter, which gives him +1 Strength, AP, and Attack on the charge. And Leader of the Pack, which gives me 50mm square base and... Okay, so Leader of the Pack gives you Swift Reform and Vanguard while he's joined to a unit of Saber-Tooth Tigers, and if he doesn't get that, of course he can still join that unit as a mismatching base, but then the unit doesn't gain Vanguard, and it's a slightly cheaper way of giving the Mammoth Hunter Vanguard, and it gives it to the Saber-Tooth Tiger as well, which is basically what, that's very good for the points that you're paying for it. Then in core, he's got a bus of 9 Bruisers with full command and Pennant of the Great Grass Sky, giving them Swift Stride. 2 Bruiser Darts with Standard Bearers and Champions. A Dart of Mercenary Veterans with paired weapons, Devastating Charge, +1 Strength and AP, and Swift Stride from their Battle Scarred special rule. 1 Saber-Tooth Tiger. A unit of 6 Bombardiers with Standard Bearer and Musician with the Banner of Discipline. A Thunder Cannon, and 3 Slave Giants with great weapons. So, for my spells, I took Healing Waters, Entwining Roots, Summer's Growth, obviously, because that's why you take a Druidism Damsel, and Stone Skin. And he got Occultism for Pentagram on Pain on his Battle Standard Bearer, and Thaumaturgy Master took Hand of Heaven, Smite the Unbeliever, Wrath of God, and Trial of Faith. So for this game we are playing Frontline Clash, so a nice simple 12 inches on for deployment, and we are playing Breakthrough. So he's got 2 Bruiser Darts on the far side. I think I dropped before he did to try and get myself the first turn. Obviously with Praying I don't get the bonus for it, but it means it's a straight roll off, so it gives me a far better chance than if I just didn't bother. Which means that he's been able to put a pair of Bruiser Darts on the far flank, which I'm going to find difficult to deal with, and stop him from scoring the objective. Then he's got a Slave Giant with them. He's got the Thunder Cannon turned to the side, because if you then turn him back in, he gets a couple of extra inches on his range there. He's got his Bruiser Bus with his BSB on the left there, in the front rank on the left, sorry. Then another Slave Giant, he's got his Bombardiers with his Shamanism, with his Shaman General. The Mercenary Veterans, a final Slave Giant, and the Sabertooth with his Mammoth Hunter on the far side. And then at the bottom, I've got my Humble Duke on Hippogriff behind the Impassable Terrain with a unit of Yeomen. I've got my Aspirants, both units have quests on the hill, the Damsel on the left, and the BSB in general in the units on the right. I think the unit on the right is the unit with the Oriflamme. Yes, that's the Oriflamme unit, the one on the right. My 2 units of Knights of the Realm and the other unit of Yeomen. So we do the Vanguard. He finished deploying last, so he went first, I believe, with his Vanguard. So he Vanguards the Sabertooth behind the Impassable Terrain, and Vanguards the Mammoth Hunter forwards a little bit. And then I respond by essentially throwing away the units on the left, moving them 12 inches up forward into an awful lot of offensive magic and bombardiers and shooting. So I'm not sure why I did that, but oh well. And then the unit on the right also makes a mistake and leaves the right flank open for the Mammoth Hunter to simply move around them. But I was conscious of him moving up and I guess chaffing or shooting at... basically getting in the way of the Realm Knight units. That was my thinking, but of course, as we go in, I lose the turn for first turn. As we go into Ogre's turn 1, he simply moves around them, which means that the Mammoth Hunter is now in my flank, around my Realm Knights, behind the Yeoman. He's just going to cause me a whole heap of problems on that flank now. And the Slave Giant moves up, with my Yeoman also now covering any charges from my Realm Knights. So, not a fantastic start for me there, but oh well, I suppose. We go through to Magic. He casts Pentagram of Pain on the Yeoman in the centre, and I think Trial of Faith, so they are wiped out, and he casts Hand of Heaven on the Yeoman on the right. So there we go. There's the wounds on the yeoman on the left and the wounds on the yeoman on the right before they die. We go through to shooting. He shoots his bombardiers at long range against my aspirants. No, he doesn't. That's next turn. He shoots at the questing knights on the hill and kills a pair of them. I pass the panic on the yeoman on the right. So they stand where they are, thankfully. And we go through to Equitaine turn 1. So with him doing a little bit of damage to the yeoman on the right, unfortunately for, fortunately for me and unfortunately for him, it leaves enough of a gap for one of my Realm Knight units to charge into the giant. And of course he's out of any reroll range. He's only Discipline 8, and I've got a charge, currently a rank, but he's probably going to kill at least one of me, and a banner. So I'm going to be winning combat by 5 plus any wounds that I do, which I decided was a pretty good take, especially if I can deal with that giant now rather than letting him dance around me for later. Go to my moves. So I'm very cautious of moving too far forwards. He's got a lot of shooting. He's got a pretty long charge range, especially on the Bruiser bus with Swift Stride and Move 6, so I'm conscious of being outranged charge-wise. So as a result, I'm incredibly cautious with my first turn, especially with the Mammoth Hunter on my flank as well. I don't think there was really any reason for me to be so cautious, but I mean, you know, that's something to learn from, I suppose, and it might pay off for the rest of the game. So I move my Hippogriff, my humble Hippogriff Duke, off onto the left flank. He's a pretty long way away from all the units. I think long enough for them to attempt charges, but I mean, he with a bastard sword instead of lances and might, he doesn't need the charge. He's on that flank to hold things up and try and kill some stuff. Just make it more difficult for him to just storm through and score the objective. I also move my general out of the Oriflamme unit with his D3+1 wounds on the charge. He's going to see if he can zone the Mammoth Hunter and eventually catch him. So for magic, I get the Oaken thrown off and Healing Waters on that central unit. I was worried about them being shot at again from the Bombardiers, so I put them on there, and with the attribute I grow back one of the Grail Knights, sorry, Questing Knights. And I move the Yeoman up to chaff the Mammoth Hunter. Just in case I don't break the giant, I'm going to need to make sure that he doesn't charge me in my rear. So post-combat, unbelievably, I don't think I took any wounds from the giant. I think I did about 4 to him. I did enough to break him, and he didn't do enough back to do any significant unit damage to that unit. So I charged him off basically, which was really very lucky for my part. And then we go through to Ogre's turn 2. So no charges for the Ogres. He's simply, let me double check with the last picture. Yeah, he's simply just shuffled back his Bombardiers a little bit. I mean, they're in range. They don't need to be moving up any further than they are. He's moved the giant far up as bait for my general. Either I'm going to charge him now, or he's going to be off stomping through my line, so I need to deal with him next turn. Besides that, though, he does like, as much as I'm scared of him on the charge, he's you know, more scared of me on the charge. If I hit him, then you know, potentially with my characters, and Ogres don't have an awful lot of ranks, so I don't need to do an awful lot of damage to him to break Steadfast. So he's backing off at the moment, and with his offensive magic and shooting as well, he doesn't need to close that with me. Like, I don't have anything that can threaten him at range. So very sensible of him to just sit off away from me. So, okay, now he shoots at the aspirants with the Bombardiers, and he rolls really, really well for the number of hits, and then to hit and wound me. And then I fail a whole load of saves, and I lose half of that unit in one shot to the Bombardiers there. The cannon misfires and does a wound to itself. But not a whole lot happens besides that. The Mammoth Hunter on the right fails to hit and kill a yeoman. And we go to my turn 2. So the humble Hippogriff charges into the giant. I was hoping to potentially go through, so I connected on the very far side, and if I get enough of an overrun, then it'll get me out of arc of potentially both units of bruisers on the left. I move up a little bit more aggressively, but not an awful lot more. Just a little bit more aggressively with my questing knights and the aspirants this turn. Moving down off of the hill, I move my general back into the unit with the Realm Knights there, and the Realm Knight unit that killed the giant took 2 wounds apparently from the giant and manages to move just enough out of the line of sight of the Mammoth Hunter, so it's not going to get charged next turn. So for magic, I managed to grow back 1 more Realm Knight, Questing Knight even, in the Damsel's unit, and put Entwining Roots on the Bombardiers to try and temper their shooting a little bit. And in combat, I take 2 wounds from the giant, but I do 5 to him between the Hippogriff and the Duke. We go through to Ogre's turn 3. So the charge is here. Both units are bruisers. Now that they've caught me in a trap, they're going to charge me and try and take me off with a charge in that flank. One of the units makes it in, but unfortunately the other one fails and stumbles forward a couple of inches. Post everything else, the cannon has moved back a little bit to stay away from the Hippogriff and basically get out of the way a little bit there. The giant in the centre is starting to walk off to deal with the Realm Knights on the far right there, and the Bombardiers, now that I've moved forward, can back off a little bit. And the Shaman bails out of that unit into the Bruisers as well. Post-combat, I managed to finish off the giant, and he does a single wound to me. So I stick in combat, then make my reform to turn and face the Bruisers, ready for the next round of combat. And we go to Equitaine turn 3. So no charges to make. I move a lot more aggressively this turn. I move the Realm Knights in the top right up and round, facing the giant in the centre. I'm out of arc of the Mammoth Hunter there. I move my general into the Questing Knights with the Oriflamme and start to move forward. I'm not particularly scared of the 3 mercenary vets. They've got a bit of a punch, but between my armour and my Aegis, I should be able to weather the attacks from that. And I move the aspirants off to the left there. There's not nearly enough of them to do a frontal charge against a big unit, so I decide to use them as a second wave against the 2 units of scoring bruiser darts there. And the yeoman continues to chaff the Mammoth Hunter. So not an awful lot happens with magic by the looks of things. I just get Oaken thrown off ready for, well, in an attempt to get some spells off, but understandably my opponent doesn't want Summer's Growth to go off on the aspirants and me to bring back 4 of them, so he lets Summer's Growth go off, but Oaken Throne go off, sorry, but not Summer's Growth. And then post-combat, I managed to survive the bruiser attacks again. As we're striking simultaneously, it means I get to attack as well. I do enough wounds to then break and then run down that unit of bruisers, so I'm now right on top of the other unit. And we go to Ogre's turn 4. So he declines to charge my general in the front. As he's a scoring unit, he's far better off just ignoring me and trying to make it for the objective, which is understandable. The giant at the top moves forward to see if he can do better than the previous giant. He chaffs my generals and BSB's unit with the Sabertooth Tiger. The Mammoth Hunter sets himself up for potentially a flank charge against my general's units, and the Bruiser Bus moves up. Now that one of my 2 Questing Knight units is chaffed, he can very comfortably take the charge from 1 unit of Questing Knight, so he moves up very aggressively. And the Shaman bails out of the Bruiser Bus to try and magic off my humble Duke. So we go through to post-magic and shooting. So between magic and shooting, he manages to kill a single Questing Knight in the Damsel's unit and get off the Hereditary on the Bruiser Bus, but he fails to kill the Humble Duke on the left, so he still hasn't used his Black Knight's Tabard. And shooting, he continues to fail to kill that single yeoman, despite the fact that he's hitting on 2s with his Mammoth Hunter. I think that's, I haven't mentioned it previously, but that's about the 3rd time that yeoman survived that. It's ridiculous for him. And then we go to my turn 4. So this is when I drop the Green Knight. I need to stop that Bruiser Bus from hitting me in the flank, and I don't particularly want to engage them in combat, and there's not anywhere that I can drop back far enough to not give him a sensible charge. So the Green Knight drops there, and I start to move around that unit. and I charge into the Sabertooth to clear that chaff and move on towards the Mercenary Vets and the Bombardiers. The Yeoman continues to chaff the Mammoth Hunter to make sure I'm not charged in the flank, and the Realm Knight unit continues to move forward, trying to zone the Mammoth Hunter. And the Realm Knights reckon they can take a second giant, so they charge in there as well. So through to combat. Obviously my general makes short work of the Sabertooth Tiger, and we kill that. And in combat with the giant up at the top, despite me failing fear, I take 4 wounds. So I fail fear in the combat with the giant. The giant then does a total of 4 wounds to me, and he's AP 4 and I've got armor 5. I managed to roll 3 6s out of 4 dice there. So I take 1 wound, and then between my combat res of a couple of wounds done to him, the charge and the banner, I break him and then run him down. So that's 2 giants there for a unit that's cheaper than 1 giant, which is very, very lucky, and it's really helping me on that flank. And I overrun through the tiger, hoping to not to roll ridiculously high, but as you can see there, I think I rolled nearly max. So I then give the mercenary vets my flank, which is not good, going into Ogre's turn 5. So, understandably, he charges me in the flank with the mercenary vets. They're going to be strength 6 with lots of attacks there, which most certainly is not good for me. He moves forward with his Bruiser block, and his BSB bops out of that unit to get in the way of the Green Knight doing anything that he wants to do. And the Bombardiers, I don't think they move up a little bit just so that they're out of the forest and they're not going to be automatically not steadfast, and get a little bit closer with the shooting. I think that moves them into short range where they are at the moment. So, post magic and shooting, he continues to try and kill the Humble Duke, and he continues to tank all of the magic thrown at him, so he's perfectly fine still. I lose an aspirant in the bottom from something or other. I'm not sure what. They wouldn't have been shooting, so something from magic kills a quest, an aspirant down there. The Yeoman continues to live as the Mammoth Hunter backs off away from those units again, and he does a total of 8 wounds to the Damsel's quests there with the Bombardiers. But between a 4+ armor save and a 6+ Aegis, I managed to make all of the saves, which could have decimated that unit, but my dice turned really, really hot there. So that gives me a bit of a break there. And we go through to combat. So I mentioned that I wasn't particularly scared of the mercenary vets, but I really should have been. He's got 5 attacks each. They've got impacts each. They're strength 6, AP 3, so they just destroy that unit. I fail with my potion of strength to do anything to them with my general. I then, thankfully, enough of them survive that I need to make a break test. I'm automatically broken, and then I flee through the bruiser block, almost out to the other side of the table here. Thankfully, it'll be my turn next, so I might be able to rally and turn around. We'll see how that goes. And the mercenary vets overrun into the flank of the Damsel's questing knights. So on to Equitaine turn 5. So the Realm Knights in the top there, they charge the Bombardiers, who elect to flee. They are then charged by the Green Knight in the centre, who flee again, obviously. They go through the forest to where the Hippogriff can see them. He charges them as well. They flee back into the forest, and he manages to roll high enough to catch them, and he makes a reform back in towards the centre of the board. Additionally, the aspirants charge into the bruisers on the bottom with their... they've got a few impacts, and it's not a huge unit, so they should be able to deal with that, especially on the charge. And my general's unit, despite not being decimated, they fail their discipline check and continue to flee, which is definitely a good thing. It means I'm not going to be able to I'm not going to be getting charged by the bruiser block behind me, because they can't get to me because of the impassable terrain in the way, which is a very, very lucky break on my end. And I also don't roll quite far enough to flee off the board, so very, very lucky break there for me, because that is upwards of 1,500 points in that unit there. So very lucky for me, very unlucky for my opponent. In fact, I rolled a whole 12 to get out of charge. Oh, I'm out of charge range, in fact. So, yes, so I fail my rally check with my general, my BSB, and that one remaining quest, and they rolled a 12 to get out of charge range of those bruisers, so they can't even try and terror check me off. Not terror check me off, they can't charge me off simply by being there, which is, again, incredibly lucky on my end. So in combat, I get Entwining Roots on the Mercenary Vets, and I heal a wound on my Hippogriff from my Druidess. I managed to survive with enough of a unit to not break and run away from the Mercenary Veterans. I kill 2 bruisers on the other flank with the Aspirants, and then break them and chase after them. And we go through to Ogre's turn 6. So the BSB charges the Questing Knights in the rear to try and help out and kill those points there. The Mammoth Hunter in the top charges into the Realm Knights, who flee just enough to not take any dangerous from the forest, but far enough to not be caught by the Mammoth Hunter. He then rallies his Bruiser to turn back around to face the Aspirants, and he reforms with the Bruisers out into a conga line, because they can't... They reform so that they're in a conga line and then move just far enough so that they are now scoring breakthrough objective. And he moves his general up nice and close to my Hippogriff to try... Oh no, sorry, the scoring unit. That's going to be more points to him. To try and panic off the Realm Knights. Unfortunately, he fails to do so, and we go on to my turn 6. So, my Green Knight had line of sight to his general, so I charge him there, and obviously he flees, because otherwise I'm going to catch him and kill him and gain an awful lot of points from nothing there. At the beginning of the turn, I deliberately didn't declare a charge against the side of the Mammoth Hunter with that Realm Knight unit, as I needed to move into his deployment zone to score the objective and gain me the 3 points from that. But he asked if I wanted to charge the Mammoth Hunter, and then I ummed and ahed over whether or not I'd win the combat, which I probably would, but I wasn't sure about, just in case like the dice spiked or whatever. And then I decided that I would charge him, and he promptly fled from me off the board, which meant that they now fail their charge and stumble close, but not close enough to the objective. My general then rallies. The Green Knight fails his charge because the general, the Shaman ran far enough to get away from there, and I charge the Aspirants into the Bruiser again. I think the Realm Knights up at the top there were fleeing from something. They had been fleeing from the Mammoth Hunter, but they make their rally check, so they're now scoring. So we are drawing the objective now. I then cast Summer's Growth on the quests with the Damsel, and they bring enough back there to then draw combat. I think I got half points on the Mercenary Vets, so I killed just enough to bring them down there, and I keep the Damsel alive, but I failed to kill the BSB because obviously I haven't got enough there to do anything there. And I think that's the final picture. So we move into the score. We're drawing the objective, and that leads it at a 16-4. So, as I mentioned earlier, there was an awful lot of points in that Fleeing Questing Knight unit, and I rolled just the right sort of rolls to get them out of dodge from being chased down by the Mercenary Vets, then passed enough of the difficult and dangerous terrain checks to not die from fleeing through units, and then I failed a rally check and failed it high enough to get out of charge range from the Bruisers in the centre there. So I got very, very lucky to not lose an awful chunk of points and bring the score an awful lot closer. Oh, and I think I wiped out the final Bruiser as well. So yeah, I scored a good chunk of points and got very, very lucky to conserve mine. I think I did well enough containing both flanks. I think luck played a big part of that as well. The Hippogriff general, the Hippogriff Duke, sorry, did very well to take on a giant and then a unit of bruisers, and then charged off the Thunder Cannon, which I think I missed entirely. But he charged that off at about turn 3 or 4. And then, of course, that Realm Knight unit killing 2 giants made a big difference in this game. But I really enjoyed this list. I think I'd need to change from Valour to Audacity to just make him a little bit more flexible if I'm playing against something that doesn't have anything big and it doesn't tie him to a challenge if I need him to be striking against a unit. If I'd had Audacity in this game on my general, then I would have been able to hit the bruisers and kill a good 3 or so of them. Otherwise, I would have just charged in and then be tied in combat with the champion, which wouldn't have been good, which is why I didn't charge that unit, the bruisers. So, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.